Hi and welcome to this video of the Butoba MT5 battery-operated reel-to-reel recorder. This machine was launched in 1960 and was the successor to a machine launched in 1959 called the MT4, which had a more 50s color scheme, being brown with yellow trim, whereas this one is, as you can see, typically gray with different tones of gray, typically 1960s. It was considered very modern at that time. Butoba was one of the first manufacturers of battery-operated tape recorders, really intended for home use. That means that they were relatively cheap, or at least affordable, and had a number of basic functions, but were not intended for professional use. However, a lot of these machines found their way into various language institutions, or universities, law enforcement, etc., because at the time the other alternatives would have been to using battery-operated machines would have been to use very expensive professional machines. And these machines were very good for their day, so they were used in a lot of these situations and basically sold all over the world. Then, as the 1960s progressed, larger, more typical tape recorder manufacturers such as Uher and Telefunken started taking over the market, and Butoba essentially disappeared during the later part of the 1960s. But if you wanted a battery-operated tape recorder at the beginning of 1960, this would probably have been one of the machines of choice. It's battery-operated, as I mentioned, and uses a battery setup like this with 8 D-cell batteries connected in 2 groups of 4. So we have 4 batteries here, 4 batteries here, which generates 6 volts. The top section is for the motors, the lower section is for the amplifiers. And the reason that they've done this way with 2 sets of batteries, I think, is to avoid interference from the motors ending up being recorded on the tape or audible in the speaker. The battery box plugs in here at the back. You have to attach it with a screw, and that simply holds it in place. If I can get it to seat properly. Here we go. Using 8 batteries makes the machine rather heavy, but on the other hand they do last for quite a while, especially the amplifier batteries, since the amplifier uses very little current. Now this machine is also slightly unique for battery-operated machines in that the controls are accessible even when the lid is closed. There's a lid here with a plastic cover so you can see the tape, but it's protected from dust. When you want to access the tape, you simply take the lid off. So we have 5 push buttons here. There's a stop button in the middle, which actually has to be depressed, like you can see it here, in order to disengage the pinch roller from the capstan. There's fast forward, wind forward, and reverse, and there is a playback button and a recording button. This little switch here is a start button. It both works as a start button and a pause button, and the reason for that is that in a machine of this type, which is operated by batteries, when the machine is in stop mode like this, you don't want any power going to the motors, so everything is basically turned off and stopped. And as soon as you press the play button, the machine takes a while to start up because of the flywheel, because it takes a while to build up the momentum in the flywheel. But in order to make it possible to start the machine at once, what you do is you press the play or record button, and then you slide this switch to the left. We'll show that in just a moment, how that works. And there's also a volume control and a tone control, and unusually for tape recorders, the tone control also works on recording. So if you set this in the wrong position, your recordings will either have too much treble or too little treble. There's a tape counter here, which looks like a clock, but it actually, in some way, counts revolutions of the left-hand reel table. But the clock mechanism was fairly common on early tape recorders because clock mechanisms were fairly common, fairly easy to get hold of, compared to counters, digital tape, or counters with just numerical indication, which became popular later on. Finally, this machine has 2 speeds. There's 1 7/8 of an inch per second and 3 3/4 inches per second. And one of the things to remember on these machines, this particular model, is that when the machine is not in use for any length of time, to set the speed switch to the lower speed, because that completely disengages the motor from the flywheel. Otherwise, the motor pulley is in contact with the flywheel, and that can cause a dent in the rubber rim on the flywheel eventually. Finally, there's a microphone input and a radio output here for connecting to a radio or amplifier. So let's get on with the demonstration. We have here an empty reel. The maximum reel size for this machine is 5 inches, which was a fairly common maximum reel size for battery-operated tape recorders that day. So we'll thread the tape out like this, and I'm going to make a recording with a microphone. This is typical of the type of microphone that would have been used with this machine. We plug it in here, and we'll press the record button. Note how there's no interlocking here. You press record and it starts recording immediately. Now, so far it doesn't actually start the tape because I haven't slid this switch to the left. Before we do that, I don't know if you can see in the video, there's a little window here which shows a green line and a green dot, and that's our recording level indicator. When the green, as the green line gets diminished when I speak, that indicates that the signal level is increased, and eventually the little dot goes out, indicating that we have an overload condition. So I slide this switch to the left. Now, so far we're on the leader tape, so this won't make any recording. But as soon as we've passed the leader and onto the main part of the tape, this recording should be audible on the tape. I should mention at this point that this machine actually has 2 motors. One motor is used for ordinary forward drive, as you can see now. That motor engages with the flywheel, which drives the capstan, and then there's a spring belt which functions as a clutch to drive the right-hand take-up reel. When fast winding, on the other hand, there's a separate motor for that, which is located between the reels, and it powers the reel tables by being flipped to the left or to the right when being powered. Because it has 2 motors, it makes the mechanics fairly simple, as there's not a lot of mechanical linkages or belts or cogwheels or whatever to transfer the motion between the motors and the respective drive sections. So we've made a recording now. We'll press the stop button, wind the tape back, and listen to the resulting recording. And we'll go back here, press the play button. Don't forget to press here.
It actually has 2 motors. One motor is used for ordinary forward drive, as you can see now. And that motor engages with the flywheel, which drives the capstan. And then there's a spring belt which functions as a clutch to drive the right-hand take-up reel.
So, there we are. This is the Butoba MT5 battery-operated tape recorder launched in 1960. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.